This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
"1949 was an extraordinary year for China. The 3-year-long civil war between the Communist Party and the Kuomintang finally ended. Following the conclusion of the celebrated Weihai and Beiping-Tianjin campaigns. With the CPC's victory, Xinhua News Agency published a commentary. The Chinese people must liberate Taiwan. It contained the first ever mention of the phrase, liberating Taiwan. "1949 was also the year when the People's Republic of China was founded. With the People's Liberation Army expanding its presence across China, liberating Taiwan became an obvious step. Yet, with tens of thousands of PLA soldiers poised to act, the operation was suddenly paused. Why? On November the 26th, 1943, the United States, the United Kingdom, and China signed the Cairo Declaration. It stated that all the territories Japan had stolen from the Chinese, such as Manchuria, Formosa, and the Pescadores, shall be restored to the Republic of China. Following the end of World War II in Europe, the US, UK, and China issued the Potsdam Proclamation. In calling for Japan's surrender, it stressed that the terms of the Cairo Declaration must be executed.
波党公告里面第8条的条款明确指出，开罗宣言要执行，就是日本要把窃取于中国的台湾呢、澎湖呢归还给中国。
Taiwan has been an inalienable part of China since antiquity. Japan seized the island in 1895. Following the First Sino-Japanese War, Taiwan subsequently endured 50 years of colonial rule before finally being returned to China.
There is a valid claim that Taiwan should be a part of China. But in general, I think the United States has recognized that there is some substantial right of China to call it a part of China from its long, long history.
However, no sooner was Taiwan returned to China than it once again became a focus of contention. On December the 10th, 1949, 2 months after the founding of the People's Republic of China, Chiang Kai-shek, leader of the Kuomintang, boarded a plane at Chengdu's Feng Huangshan Airport, bound for Taiwan. The retreat by the Kuomintang regime marked the start of a long period of separation between the two sides of the Taiwan Strait. The United States, which had actively supported the Chiang Kai-shek regime, responded with a statement. For the past 4 years, the United States and other allied powers have accepted the exercise of Chinese authority over the island. The United States has no predatory designs on Formosa or on any other Chinese territory. The United States has no desire to obtain special rights or privileges, or to establish military bases on Formosa at this time. Nor does it have any intention of utilizing its armed forces to interfere in the present situation. the United States government will not pursue a course which will lead to involvement in the civil conflict in China. The statement issued by the Truman administration on January the 5th, 1950, clearly recognized the PRC's sovereignty over Taiwan. On January the 12th, U.S. Secretary of State Dean Acheson gave a speech at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. In it, he suggested that Taiwan was outside of America's defensive perimeter.
杜鲁门总统这份声明实际上表明，美国当时并不打算介入中国解放台湾。
Earlier, the CPC Central Committee had published a message to soldiers at the front and all compatriots in China. It explicitly identified as the major operational mission of 1950 to liberate Taiwan, Hainan Island, and Xizang, and realize China's reunification. The man appointed to take charge of the military operation in Taiwan was Su Yi, second in command and deputy political commissar of the 3rd Field Army, acting commander, political commissar.
当时主要让他们研究3个方面，第一呢，就是台湾可否在尽快的时间内攻克啊。那么第二就是如何攻克台湾，第3个呢，就是用什么办法来争取台湾的分化台湾的敌军。
However, on June the 25th, 1950, the international climate changed dramatically when the Korean War broke out. The U.S. government had previously declared that it no longer intended to defend Taiwan. Yet, on the day the Korean War began, Douglas MacArthur, head of the U.S. Far East Command, submitted a report outlining a strategy for containing communism in Asia. In it, he identified Taiwan's vital strategic role and called for the U.S. to provide military aid to Chiang Kai-shek and send air and sea forces to defend Taiwan. On June the 27th, President Truman released a statement by referring to the undetermined status of Taiwan. It provided grounds for interfering in the Taiwan question. In these circumstances, the occupation of Formosa by communist forces would be a direct threat to the security of the Pacific area and to United States forces, performing their lawful and necessary functions in that area. Accordingly, I have ordered the 7th Fleet to prevent any attack on Formosa. As a corollary of this action, I am calling upon the Chinese government on Formosa to cease all air and sea operations against the mainland. The 7th Fleet will see that this is done. The determination of the future status of Formosa must await the restoration of security in the Pacific, a peace settlement with Japan, or consideration by the United Nations.
这个论调呢，直接违背了开罗宣言和波茨坦公报的精神啊。这2个国际法文件说得非常清楚，那个台湾是日本侵占中国的领土，必须交还给中国。而且呢，1945年10月25日，台湾正式交还了中国。
美国政府抛出台湾地位未定论，实际上就是为美国武装干涉中国人民解放军解放台湾，制造借口。
The about turn by the U.S. from Taiwan being outside of America's defensive perimeter to ordering its forces to prevent any attack on Taiwan had taken a matter of a few months. So, what was the reason for this rapid reversal?
这个时候，中国已经不是原来的中国，而是共产党领导的中国。在这种情况下，中国政府统一台湾不符合美国的利益，所以美国呢就抛出了台湾地位未定论。
所谓台湾地位未定论呢，实际上是美国和一些西方国家炮制出来一个概念，就是在台湾问题上设置障碍，阻碍统一，是出于美国的战略利益，出于西方他的战略利益，但是本质上是一个违反国际法的所谓的概念，同样 也是对世界人民反法西斯斗争的一种侮辱。
The PLA was already deployed, ready to act. However, after serious consideration, the leaders of the CPC decided to postpone Taiwan's liberation. The presence of U.S. forces in the region removed Chiang Kai-shek's fear of being overthrown. To secure his position, he asked his guardian for further support. Not only did he seek help in defending Taiwan, he went further and even called for the reconquest of the mainland. The realignment eventually gave rise, on December 2, 1954, to the Sino-American Mutual Defense Treaty between the KMT authorities and the U.S. government.
这个条约是非法的、无效的，损害了中国的主权。对此呢，当时中国政府提出了严重的抗议。
On December 5, 1954, People's Daily ran an editorial under the headline, "We definitely must liberate Taiwan." Following the founding of the People's Republic of China, the PRC's lawful seat at the United Nations had been unlawfully occupied by the Chiang Kai-shek regime. This state of affairs remained unchanged for 22 years, until October 25, 1971, when the United Nations General Assembly, Resolution 2758, recognized the PRC as the sole legitimate representative of China to the United Nations.
Adopted.
The PRC also became one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. The representatives of the Chiang Kai-shek regime were expelled from the seat it had unlawfully held at the United Nations, as well as from all its associated organizations.
2758号决议应该是国际正义的一种体现，它是联合国的一次集体的国际行动，我把它也称之为一次集体的国际法行动。
2758号决议的意义非常大啊，那么它意味着中国在国际上的这个外交承认啊，最终能够得以实现啊，那么这就解决了中国政府啊在国际上的合法性的这样一个大的问题。
In the 2 decades prior to the restoration of the PRC's seat at the United Nations, China and the United States had maintained no diplomatic relations. That changed in 1972. This is Dr. Henry Kissinger, President Nixon's national security advisor.
在基辛格秘密访华以后，这个中美关系正常化的进程开始。那么再到中国呢同意尼克松来访，这个时候呢就是改变了原来的国际地缘政治，改变了国际战略格局。
基辛格访问了以后呢，这个事情就公开了，而且7月下旬呢也说了，尼克松要在第2年5月之前访问中国，所以中美走向破冰，中美走向和解，这个已经成为世界上的一件大事。那么对各国政府实际上都会产生了影响。
On February 21, 1972, President Richard Nixon landed in Beijing and shook hands with Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai. China and the U.S. had officially started breaking the ice. When our hands met, one era ended and another began.
周恩来总理和尼克松在首都机场的握手，两个大国重新走到一起，开始了对话和恢复外交的这样一个路径，所以说是破了严冰，然后开始走向了一个中美关系新的征程。
The reason this was called icebreaking when the president did this was because it really changed the relationship that had been established after World War II, when the Communist Party was now in control of China. And I think that the president's willingness to open the doors and make a difference, I think that was a very visionary statement.
This historic moment would change the world. On February the 27th, 1972, Premier Zhou and President Nixon signed the Joint Communique of the People's Republic of China and the United States of America. also known as the Shanghai Communique. During the negotiation, the only point on which the two sides had been deadlocked was the Taiwan question.
在中美关系的历史上，始终对中美关系产生带有这个巨大的，甚至是全局性的、颠覆性的影响的问题首要的就是台湾问题。
After several rounds of tough negotiations, the two sides reached agreement on addressing the sticking point. The U.S. declared that the United States acknowledges that all Chinese on either side of the Taiwan Strait maintain there is but one China and that Taiwan is a part of China. The United States government does not challenge that position. It affirms the ultimate objective of the withdrawal of U.S. forces and military installations from Taiwan. In his memoir, White House Years, Henry Kissinger states that he himself proposed the wording of the U.S. declaration. It brought together two previously hostile nations. The Shanghai Communique was probably unique in its success in guiding relations between two great nations for 7 years, without ever a dispute over its meaning, until it was superseded by diplomatic relations in 1979. Throughout the negotiations of the Shanghai Communique, there was disagreement on the issue of the One China principle. Eventually, the two sides agreed to disagree.
They were both quite seasoned in their trade and stuck to their principles while striving to achieve something acceptable to both.
上海公报之所以是转折点，一个根本原因在于呢，上海公报呢，中美双方就台湾问题达成了相当程度的共识，它就意味着中美关系真正的从敌对走向改善可以说迈出了很重要的一步，为今后中美关系实现正常化，可以说呢，打开了大门。
However, areas of disagreement remained, even after the signing of the Shanghai Communique. Still, the melting of the ice seemed irreversible. Finally, on December the 16th, 1978, a joint communique on the establishment of diplomatic relations between the PRC and the U.S. was issued. The United States of America recognizes the government of the People's Republic of China as the sole legal government of China. Within this context, the people of the United States will maintain cultural, commercial, and other unofficial relations with the people of Taiwan. And the government of the United States of America acknowledges the Chinese position that there is but one China, and Taiwan is part of China. Compared to the Shanghai Communique, the Joint Communique was more explicit regarding the One China principle. It stated that the U.S. must sever diplomatic relations with Taiwan, abrogate the Mutual Defense Treaty, and withdraw its military forces from the island.
美国在一个中国原则上呢，又往前迈出了实质性的一步，因为我们解决台湾问题最大的外部障碍是来自于美国的，那么中美建交就意味着这样一种障碍在一定程度上减轻了。
Most important was that the United States acknowledged that the Chinese people consider Taiwan a part of China, and that there was only one China, and that we would not challenge that proposition. At the same time, Chairman Mao made it clear that the Taiwan problem might require a long period for a final resolution.
By the late 1970s, the new climate of peaceful relations, coupled with the adoption of the reform and opening up policy, was propelling China to center stage in the world arena. After the establishment of China-U.S. diplomatic relations, the Taiwan question and the peaceful reunification of China were again placed on the agenda. In December 1978, the third plenary session of the 11th CPC Central Committee proposed replacing the phrase liberation of Taiwan with Taiwan returns to China and completes the great cause of Chinese reunification. On New Year's Day, 1979, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, in a message to compatriots in Taiwan, outlined a general policy for China's peaceful reunification and announced the cessation of the bombardment of Kinmen.
在1979年呢，元旦，中美正式建交，中国人大发表了告台湾同胞书，那么徐向前国防部长呢，就宣布呢，停止炮击，这样使得整个的国际形势和台海形势就缓和下来。
However, just 3 months later, the United States Congress passed the new law.
与台湾关系法是什么法？是美国的国内法。台湾问题是什么？它是中国的内政问题。你美国一个国内法，你凭什么去管中国的内政问题呢？最重要的问题之一是台湾关系法里边对台湾是有军事承诺的。那么，这个军事承诺，我们最熟悉的是对台军售了。
The U.S. must sever diplomatic relations with Taiwan. The U.S. must abrogate its mutual defense treaty with Taiwan. U.S. forces must withdraw from Taiwan. In establishing diplomatic relations with China, the United States had committed itself to 3 key principles. 2 were the removal of its military presence from Taiwan and the abrogation of the mutual defense treaty. But the most critical issue was that of arms sales to Taiwan.
美国接受了中美建交3原则，但是在建交之后不久，美国呢就制定了与台湾关系法，而这一个法律规定，美国呢继续向台湾出售武器，它显然违背了美国建交3原则的承诺。
Deng Xiaoping, China's paramount leader, made clear the Chinese government's position on numerous occasions when he met U.S. officials. In a meeting with a delegation from the U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations on April the 19th, 1979, he stated, China was very frustrated by the Taiwan Relations Act because it denied the One China principle in nature. Subsequently, when negotiations on the third Joint Communique began in June 1981, the core issue was U.S. arms sales to Taiwan.
邓小平曾经深刻指出，最根本的还是这个法，这个法存在一天，中美关系就存在一天的阴影。
I personally think that arms sales to Taiwan tend to be very, very political. So the Taiwan Relief Act, as I said, mostly in response to a very strong right-wing Republican move at the time, caused the arms sales to Taiwan to begin. And that, of course, has been a thorn in the side of the Chinese for all of the years since. They're political in the United States because it's popular for Democrats and Republicans to sell arms to Taiwan because that's good for business in their states, it's good for the economy of the United States, etc.
美国在这个问题上呢，他一直不让步，所以谈判进行得很艰苦啊，一直谈了1年零2个月。这个当然，中国更不能让步。这是原则问题。1982年5月，就派布什访华来探底，邓小平见了他了，向他很严肃地指出，美国向台湾卖武器问题是一个潜伏的危机，如果两国关系中的这个疙瘩能够揭开，将对全球战略很有利。美方要承诺在一定时间内逐步减少，直至完全终止向台湾出售武器。
The U.S. responded just over 2 months later in a letter from Reagan to Deng Xiaoping.
他说要美国承诺这个明确的期限就停止对台军售，他说是困难的，但是呢，他明确的表示美国不寻求一个长期的对台军售政策，而且呢还承诺了要在一定期限之内这个停止对台军售。
This led to further prolonged, tough negotiations. Finally, on August the 15th, 1982, the two sides reached agreement. 2 days later, they signed the August 17th communique. The United States stated that it does not seek to carry out a long-term policy of arms sales to Taiwan, that its arms sales to Taiwan will not exceed, either in qualitative or in quantitative terms, the level of those supplied in recent years since the establishment of diplomatic relations between the United States and China, and that it intends to reduce gradually its sales of arms to Taiwan, leading over a period of time to a final resolution. From the Shanghai Communique in 1972 to the China-U.S. Joint Communique on the establishment of diplomatic relations in 1978, and the August 17th Communique of 1982, it had taken a decade and hundreds of rounds of negotiations to build the three beacons by which future China-U.S. relations would navigate. Together, they created a political foundation of which the China-U.S. relationship could develop.
这个上海公报、建交公报跟817公报这个3个公报是一个整体，一个中国的原则是体现在这个3个公报当中。美国方面对一个中国原则的确认，是一步一步的越来越明确和越来越加强的。
But did the U.S., through its actions, reflect its commitment to the One China principle and a peaceful resolution?
在中美发表817公报之前，美国里根政府指定当时的美国在台协会的驻台办事处主任李杰明向蒋经国口头做出承诺，
其中有2条呢，就是关于军售。第一呢，美国没有确定停止向台湾出售武器的时间。还有一条就是美国向台湾出口武器之前呢，不会与北京商量。那么这个就反映了美国真实的态度嘛。
这些承诺呢，显然是背离了817公报的基本精神。它表明美国在台湾问题上始终是说一套做一套。
However, the U.S.'s continued signaling of its support for Taiwan did not prevent the development of cross-strait exchanges. The Chinese government's resolute advocacy of the basic principles of peaceful reunification and one China, two systems served to ease cross-strait tensions. The Association of Relations Across the Taiwan Straits, or ARATS, and the Straits Exchange Foundation, CEF, were established. And in November 1992, they agreed to the statement that both sides of the Taiwan Strait adhere to the One China principle. This has become known as the 1992 Consensus.
两岸关系紧张动荡，92共识呢，就是台海和平稳定的定海神针，也是两岸关系和平发展的政治基础。它所起的作用呢，就是通过共同表达坚持一个中国原则的态度，为两会的商谈奠定政治基础。
The United States should allow it to become an autonomous part of China, which could have its own system, one nation, two systems, peacefully. I think it would be the best thing for the Taiwanese. I suggested that one of the strategic things for the next 20 years is to try to find a way for one nation, two systems peacefully. So I believe the diplomacy of the United States should be set to do that and not to be setting up for the next war or the next conflict.
Based on the 1992 Consensus, another milestone was established for the peaceful development of cross-strait relations. From April the 27th to the 29th, 1993, Ku Qianfu, chairman of CEF, and Wang Daohan, the head of ARATS, met in Singapore They signed 4 agreements on stepping up cooperation in fields including the economy, science and technology, and culture between the mainland and Taiwan. The Wangkou talks were the first official contact between senior officials from the mainland and Taiwan after a long period of separation.
我觉得9·2共识最大的意义在于，实际上，它首先明确了一个中国的原则，也就是说，两岸都认同一个中国，同样也明确了发展方向，就是追求统一。更重要的还有一方面，尽管两岸之间现在还有我们的分歧，但是在解决两岸关系上，两岸中国人用自己的智慧来解决了这样的问题。
In response to the rapid growth in economic and trade cooperation across the strait, the United States once again adjusted its strategic engagement with China. Events in Europe in 1989 and the breakup of the Soviet Union also had a major impact on U.S. foreign policy.
1991年苏联解体以后，美国成为世界上唯一的超级大国。这样子，他对借助中国的需求下降，认为中国对美国的重要这个地位下降，他就违背自己在中美建交中对中国的承诺。
Shortly after the breakup of the Soviet Union, the U.S. announced the sale of F-16 Fighting Falcon jets to Taiwan. This was the largest arms sale by the United States to the island after it established diplomatic relations with China. The commitments in the August 17th communique were still fresh, yet U.S. arms sales to Taiwan were increasing rather than the opposite.
1992年，布什为竞选连任，宣布向台湾出售价值60亿美元、150架 F-16战机。
巴伊西公报很清楚啊，要在数量和质量上逐年递减。你一下来了150架 F-16，那么巴伊西公报何在？巴伊西公报的承诺精神何在？美国的国际信誉何在？
Even before the issue of the 150 F-16 fighters could be addressed, another incident occurred, which added fuel to the fire. On May the 22nd, 1995, the U.S. government announced that Lee Teng-hui would be permitted to pay a private visit to the United States in the capacity of an alumnus. Thus, a 17-year ban on visits by Taiwan's leaders to the United States was broken.
尽管美国一再解释李登辉访美是私人性质的，但是呢，他为李登辉鼓吹2个中国、一中一台提供了舞台，助长了国际反华势力和岛内台独势力的嚣张气焰，直接引发了台海地区的这种紧张对立。
1979年中美建交以后，就没有台湾当局的领导人和就是高级官员到美国去。李登辉他做到了，美国违背对我们承诺。
Lee Teng-hui's so-called private visit to the United States included a number of blatantly separatist events, promoting Taiwan independence and the breakup of China.
李登辉访美是造成1995年、1996年台海危机的直接的原因。
The bad faith on the part of the U.S. and Lee's secessionist activities left China with no choice other than to respond strongly in defense of its sovereignty. In July 1995 and March 1996, it conducted 2 major live missile firing exercises in a demonstration against Taiwan independence and Taiwan's secession from China. The second Wangkou talks were also postponed.
美国允许李登辉访美，导致台海局势的紧张。一个呢，就是中国大陆呢在台湾海峡举行了军事演习；第二呢，就是中国政府召回了驻美大使，那么第三呢，就是中美2国的军舰第一次，或者说在中美关系缓和以后，第一次在海上发生军事对峙的这样一个现象那么最终呢，这次这个访问呢，对中美关系还是的负面影响还是蛮大的。
China fought back on all fronts: political, military, diplomatic, and public opinion. The Clinton administration was forced to reel in its misguided China policy.
美国克林顿政府当时做出了一个对台3不支持的承诺：不支持台湾独立，不支持2个中国一中一台，不支持台湾加入主权国家组成的国际组织。那这样就指联合国嘛。后来1998年克林顿到中国来访问，到上海去的时候，他当着在上海图书馆当着听众的面自己讲了这个对台3不承诺。
Unfortunately, even as these commitments were being made, the U.S. was sending signals to Taiwan that suggested rather different intentions. On July the 9th, 1999, Taiwan leader Lee Tong-hui, with U.S. support, declared his two-states theory. Once again, the Chinese government responded.
从美国对台对华政策历史来看，美国只要对付中国大陆，他必打的牌，或者首选的牌，就是这个台湾牌。小布什也不出所料，打起这个台湾牌，他做出了一个可以说是空前的这个表态啊，或者动作。
On April the 24th, 2001, President George W. Bush announced a massive arms sale to Taiwan. The move came after he had labeled China as a strategic competitor. The following day, he stated that the United States would defend Taiwan with whatever it took to help Taiwan defend themselves.
他在接受记者采访的时候，公开表示啊，这个如果两岸生战，美军将协防台湾。这是意味着什么？这意味着他放弃了美国在中美建交以后长期奉行的在这个问题上的所谓模糊政策，转而采取清晰政策。这是一个标志性的事件。
Soon after the reversal of its Taiwan policy, the U.S. came under attack. The September 11th attacks shocked the United States. Under both domestic and international pressure, the Bush administration was obliged to abruptly modify its Taiwan policy. The separatist Democratic Progressive Party had come to power in Taiwan in May 2000. Its leader, Chen Shui-bian, invented a new phrase: one country on each side, and engineered a highly confrontational period in cross-strait relations. Chen seemed unaware of the dramatic change in the U.S. attitude following the September 11th attacks.
911事件的发生，美国把它的战略主要的注意力集中到反恐，那么中国呢，政府呢给予了积极的支持和配合，为中美关系的继续改善创造了一个有利的契机。
But even as it sought to improve relations with China, the U.S. continued its arms sales to Taiwan. During his 8-year presidency, George W. Bush authorized 6 arms sales to Taiwan, worth a total of $15.6 billion. He also established a 3-level strategic and operational dialogue platform with Taiwan and opened a defense hotline with the island. Besides regular visits by Taiwan's defense officials, further institutionalized military cooperation between the two sides.
实际上呢，这就是他的反华啊，他的恶化，他的对华战略竞争体系的这样一种这个战略手段的运用，他是说一套做一套的，台前一套背后一套的。
By the start of the 21st century, China's economy had entered a period of sustained strong growth. The GDP gap between China and the United States was narrowing. China's had become the world's second-largest economy after the United States. By this time, the U.S. was openly practicing a policy of treating China as a strategic competitor.
随着中国的崛起啊，以前这个美国不觉得这是一个太大的问题，因为中国弱嘛。那么现在呢，中国强大了啊，中国的意识形态跟它的不一样，这是他重视中国啊， 甚至于这是他采取这个所谓战略竞争的这样一个对抗性的政策的一个非常重要的一个方面。
Republican Donald Trump, soon after winning the White House, took up the policy of strategic competition with China. At the end of 2017 and the beginning of 2018, his administration issued 3 national security strategy reports. They accused China of being a revisionist country, labeled China as a major strategic competitor, and declared a whole-of-government approach to strategically competing with China.
最严重的就是特朗普时期呢，美国的国会通过了很多涉台法案和涉台条款，基本上就是推翻了美国政府当时对中国的承诺。
China, by contrast, has never changed its attitude to the Taiwan question. On January the 2nd, 2019, Chinese President Xi Jinping gave a speech at a meeting to mark the 40th anniversary of the publication of the Message to Compatriots in Taiwan. In it, he reiterated the general policy of striving for the peaceful reunification of China and put forward a series of policies and measures for improving cross-strait relations and promoting peaceful reunification.
台湾问题是中国的内政，事关中国核心利益和中国人民民族感情，不容任何外来干涉。
Joe Biden, since becoming president, has repeatedly affirmed the U.S. commitment to the One China policy and its opposition to Taiwan independence. His actions, however, have told a different story. On March 3, 2021, the Biden administration released a document called Interim National Security Strategic Guidance. In it, as well as in Anthony Blinken's first speech as Secretary of State, China was identified as the only country with the economic, diplomatic, military, and technological power to seriously challenge the stable and open international system.
奥巴马、特朗普、拜登，他们这个对华政策和对台湾的政策都有它一致的地方，就是抓住台湾不放，向台湾提供所谓安全保护。其中呢，很大的一个表现就是对台军售。
中美建交之后，美国出于维护自身的利益，始终在台湾问题上小动作不断，始终是说一套做一套，不断的破坏、违背自己做出的承诺。
Nothing can sever the inherent ties between people who share the same ancestry and blood. On March the 27th, 2023, former Taiwan leader Ma Ying-jeou arrived in Shanghai, becoming the first former Taiwan leader to visit the Chinese mainland. On April the 1st, Ma traveled to his parents' place of origin in Xiongtan, Hunan province, where he made offerings to Ma Lian, his grandfather. On hearing a warm welcome home from his fellow countrymen, Ma sobbed. Replying in the local dialect, he said, "To return home is a wish shared by all the Taiwan compatriots. This stela at the mausoleum of the Yellow Emperor in Shanxi province stands as witness to this 60-year-old desire. An inscription infused with sadness and hope, written by someone before their departure from the mainland, reads, 'May there be no more broken countries and divided families.'"
台湾问题是中国核心利益的核心，是中美关系基础中的基础，是第一条不可突破的红线。实际上就是要强调维护台湾是中国领土一部分的地位不被改变，维护国家主权与领土完整是中国的核心利益。